right. Cool. All right. Yeah, Bill, thanks for making the time. Thanks for really agreeing to narrate my life story.
Absolutely.
With Confessions of a Campaign Manager, obviously, really important to me, and just
Hmm.
really important that I got a good voice. A lot of people suggested I recorded myself, and
Sure.
that was something I didn't want to. I wanted to make sure I went with a professional, but at the same time, it is my story, so
Right.
wanted
Ab-
to
ab-
make sure that was authentic. So I really appreciated being able to find you in that process.
Absolutely.
Which
It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed the whole thing, and I know it was a little bit of a little bit of pressure. I'm not going to lie to you, knowing that I'm responsible for giving someone's life story, but I enjoyed it so much. So I appreciate the opportunity.
so why did you get into um book narration, and was I your first? Were there others before me?
Hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that
I
process.
feel like we're dating now. Uh, yeah, I had done some books before, just a few, as a matter of fact, and I got into it because back when I was younger, many, many moons ago, I was very much into acting, theater acting,
Cool.
and of course, growing up, didn't make a career out of that. Found
I
other
did.
careers
I did
along the way.
musical theater all through high school, and obviously that is not where the fates took me.
Correct, correct. The bill collectors weren't going to enjoy that, so I found a career and decided that I wanted to still tap into that creative nuance that I've had, and this was a really easy way to do it because in today's world with today's technology, you don't have to go to a studio, professional studio, and record books or any kind of voiceover work anymore. I have a lot of friends who do voiceover work and they do it right from home. So I took a look at it, I fell in love with it, and I guess the rest is history. I haven't stopped doing it. I don't plan to. It's too much fun.
Awesome.
So yeah, I do appreciate it. And on the flip side, you and I talked a lot before I recorded the book, and
Hmm.
have talked, of course, since then. So I've gotten to know you a little bit, and I've also looked at some of the other books you've written. Now you've written different kinds of books,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is pretty interesting. So what's kind of your favorite thing to write? Do you enjoy the sci-fi, the fiction, the
You,
writing your own
you know,
memoir?
there's a through line in all my work. I would say is emotional honesty. I really like in all the work I read, I watch, I listen to in podcasts and whatever else.
Mhm.
If you can grip me with that emotional honesty, if I can tell you're not bullshitting me,
Right.
that's really you're gonna get a 10 out of 10 from me. And it's fortuitous that my autobiography was actually the first thing I wrote, because I was like, okay, how can you be more emotionally honest than
Hmm.
writing an autobiography? And I get to learn every day. Oh, I didn't know that about myself. When I'm
Yeah.
writing a piece of fiction, that these thoughts existed in my head. I would say fantasy actually is my favorite um genre. The brain takes you to some dark places, and I think being able to express with that kind of psychological security that you're in a fantasy world, and so you can be a little more reckless, for lack of a better term.
Hmm.
um that's something I've really found out about myself. I wrote Oasis, of course,
Hmm.
a couple of years ago as my fantasy debut, but now I'm working on an urban fantasy trilogy about a group of Indian Americans who steal a drug in modern day New York. and the drug is conceptualized as white privilege. And I'm learning a whole lot about myself through writing it. It's a much grittier book than I typically write. But it's something very special to me, and I hope to be able to share it with the world soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds awesome.
Yeah. So, what attracted you to Confessions?
You know, it was interesting because I'm constantly looking for different books to audition for, and there's tons of books. There's tons of books in today's world that are available to narrators, which is great. But as you were just touching upon, it's much more enjoyable, and I feel I get much more of my true self in the recording if I feel attached to it in some way. There's
Yeah.
something about it, really, really grabs my attention. And yours was kind of twofold, really. First and foremost, for those who haven't read the book or listened to the book yet, uh, most people don't realize that some people, at least, may not realize that you spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C. area. I am originally from the Washington, D.C.
Yep.
area. So I grew up with parents who worked in the government, although I have never been pulled towards the governmental aspects, if you will. It's always something that you deal with, whether you want to or not, when you are living in DC. So I found that part to be interesting, and to see an outsider's perspective, not just from someone outside of DC, but someone who is a young American from an Indian descent who's pouring their heart and soul into what they're doing, and pouring their life in many, many hours, as you find out when you read the memoir. It just, to me, was fascinating. It showed me a side that you don't realize, that you don't
Yeah.
see or hear about. When you're watching the TV, you just see the faces. You don't see what happens behind the scenes and how much goes into it. And I found it just on the audition. I found it interesting, and then when I was able to read the entire book, I was sold.
Well, I thank you for that. That means a lot. I when I was writing it, um, one of my mentors told me, this book is too honest. You won't work in politics again if you publish it.
Wow.
And I considered that, and I published anyways, and he was right. That was uh, now I was done with the political phase of my life anyways. Perhaps, if I wasn't, I would have made a different decision. But definitely very proud of that, and very happy that you were able to capture that. I hear great feedback about how I picked a great narrator for
Oh,
the
good,
project.
good. I'm glad I was able to come through, and I'm sure you don't regret your decision. So
No.
well, along those lines, since we're talking about the DC connection, and you
Hmm.
can see I'm wearing my
Yeah.
Washington
Look,
Nationals World Series hat.
the Washington Nationals are now the permanent MLB champions. This is one of the great positives of our current environment. Nationals world champions in perpetuity, baby.
I know, and people don't realize how long we have been waiting for this. We waited forever just to get a team, then we waited
Yeah,
forever to finally get there, and here we are. So
yeah.
if you're from the DC area, we probably bore people to
And
death,
it
but
and
we
it
love it.
and it happened without Bryce Harper, man.
I know. I thought that was very interesting, because if I were to go back in my closet back here, I will show you the Bryce Harper jersey I bought the day he was signed.
Yeah,
And now it's a collector's item, and we turn around and win
right.
it once he leaves. So, but anyway, in regards to that, to a little more of a personal side outside of the writing, you got to spend. Now you are from outside of the DC area.
Mhm.
You're from Virginia,
Yeah.
but you spent many years in DC, both in college and then career wise. What's kind of your favorite thing about the city of Washington, DC?
Oh, there are so many. from a political standpoint, I absolutely love going to the monuments around Fourth of July,
Mm-hmm.
Memorial Day, some kind of holiday where there's going to be people from all over the country. Living in DC, you forget how privileged you are sometimes to be able to wake up and be blessed with a view of maybe the Washington Monument or
Mm-hmm.
the Capitol, and being able to walk alongside history.
Yeah.
One of my favorite memories from living in DC is I was at the FDR Memorial one Memorial Day, just walking around, and I saw a grandfather just talking to his maybe 10-year-old son about what the memorial means and what FDR meant to the country at that time in history.
Mm-hmm.
From a political side, I mean, I think it should be required for any politician.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise, you know, I live in Columbus, Ohio now, and it's not a food oasis. There's actually some pretty good food options here.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you can't beat DC, right? You can't beat a good metropolitan area. Any cuisine you want, and just such great staples. Ray's Hellburger,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, getting a half smoke at Ben's Chili
Ben's
Bowl.
Chili Bowl. Yep.
Um,
The birth of Five
we're
Guys.
we're so blessed on the food front as well. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, New York has better food," and it does in some respects. But I mean, DC, you're still fairly blessed with the food variety.
Yep. Yep. You sound like me. I always go to food. That makes a big. And you're right. Columbus, Ohio, it isn't bad
It
when it
isn't
comes to
bad.
the
It
food.
isn't bad. We got the best ice cream in the country, possibly.
Jenny's ice cream.
Jenny's.
Yep.
Absolutely. So what are you listening to? What are you reading these days?
Uh, wow. I just finished listening to Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers, which
Okay.
is a phenomenal book. I'm very much into, I tend to read maybe two-thirds of the time, it'll be nonfiction. It'll be some sort of something dealing with philosophy or religion or comedy or something like that, so memoirs, biographies. And then about a third of the time, I'll delve into the non or the fiction, if you will, which I'm actually reading or listening to Watchers by Dean Koontz
Oh,
right now,
nice.
who's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I have on my list a couple of Stephen King's, but his tend to be about 27 hours long, so I commit those usually to the longer car rides,
Yeah.
if you will. But as far as reading is concerned, I've been reading a lot of the Mark Manson books lately. His latest is Love Is Not Enough. He just wrote, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's famous for the book. I'm sorry, I just completely left my head. I'm actually just finished reading his book called Everything's Fucked, a story about hope.
Okay.
So he's very funny in a very real and gritty way,
Yeah.
and really kind of opens your eyes to some of the things we take for granted. So I spend a little time reading, a little time listening.
Yeah.
Anyone who isn't listening in today's world, with either A, commuting, or B, we live in a world of echoes and Alexa. She
Hmm.
can read to you if you don't want to.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm doing right now, as far as listening and reading.
Cool.
So for you, um, going back a little bit to the writing.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of a flip of what you were just talking about, but in a bit of a different way. You can certainly tell me what you're reading now or listening
Yeah.
to now, but what what were you listening to, but more reading
Yeah.
as you grew up, that kind of got you to the point of, I can do this, I can write? Because me personally, I know I don't have the talent to write.
I've
Uh,
been well, so first off, everyone has the talent to write. It's like any other discipline, right? You just have to work at it consistently.
Hmm.
But I appreciate that. They tell you the key to being a good writer is when you start your next project, you have to have that thought of, oh, I don't know how to put together words anymore. Um, this could all be a tragic mistake. Um, I've done some of these interviews before, and I've always wanted to get questions about the fundamental books in my upbringing, and I never have.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the question.
Good.
Um, you know, uh, three books come to top of mind.
Okay.
uh, The Godfather, by Mario Puzo. What It Takes by political journalist Richard Ben Kramer. It's an 1,100-page tome about the
Oh,
1988 presidential election, and it doesn't really talk about the election so much it profiles six people and what what made them think they can and should run for president of the United States.
interesting.
Just a great book, and one of those six people is now the Democratic nominee, Joe Biden. The
Wow.
first time he ran for president was in 1988, and as it became clear to me that he was going to be the nominee, the first thing I did was I popped open What It Takes, and I reread some of those chapters. I think just a uh, great view of how to write about people in a way that make them seem, one, relatable, and two, on the other side of things, larger than life. Um, and then on the other side, the third and most important book in my writing development has been The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton.
Uh,
She was 16 when she wrote it. It is a fairly small book. It's the exact opposite of What It Takes. Uh, and it's the first book that made me cry, man. It's so touching. And she's able to do it in so few words.
mm,
I really like to pride myself on making my books as small as humanly possible. I think
sure.
time is a commodity, that obviously no one can get back, and so I really don't like reading a book where I have to endure unnecessary scenes, unnecessary words.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, The Outsiders really hit home for me.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a classic. It's huge.
yeah,
I think I would like to think a lot of people have read The Outsiders, whether it was in school or outside of school. But if you haven't, boy, you're missing out. It's a powerful book. It
yeah,
really is.
yeah. So what's the first thing you're gonna do when they lift the stay-at-home order? Um, what you looking forward
That's
to?
that's a good question. Go out anywhere.
Yeah,
It's interesting because I'll probably go to Vegas. Vegas is one of my favorite places in the U.S. and I have a lot of friends out there.
cool.
And I usually go out for March Madness. Of course, that didn't happen this year. Uh, but on a bigger scale, probably that. On a smaller scale, I'm going to go out and just enjoy a round of golf because
Ah,
I never imagined a world where I couldn't go out and even go golfing,
yeah,
and right now that's where we are. And it's pretty crazy. And it's certainly tested my ability to come up with things to do and things to
yeah,
keep me busy. As a matter of fact, I just signed up for Rosetta Stone the other day to start learning languages
cool.
because I thought, well, I'm sitting here, I've got nothing else to do. When I have time, I'll take some courses. So trying to better myself,
Yeah,
always trying to learn something new. But I will be glad when we can go out and go to a restaurant and sit down again and go
yeah,
out and just have a round of golf. I'm more at my age, the simple things mean a lot. So,
yeah,
uh, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Well, hopefully we're not too far away from
yeah,
here.
yeah.
So, so question I had for you, because you are somebody, again, if you haven't listened to the book yet or know Barack personally, been all over. In fact, I thought I had been a lot of places, and you've got me beat. But what, through your travels, has been some of the greatest places and experiences?
You know, I can't answer with just one. Los Angeles, incredibly meaningful for me. Um, you know, it was where I got sober. I'm 5 years sober. Um, you know, it was where I learned to cook. You know, first 25 years of my life, I 26 years of my life, I hadn't really uh figured cooking was important. It's kind of where I learned to be a human being.
Yeah.
And just I made great friends. I reconnected with some old friends who'd moved to LA, and just a wonderful, wonderful experience. I really started to reestablish a work-life balance at that point in my life. Before it had been work 24/7.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, Albuquerque, New Mexico, that's God's country, man. Like, just so beautiful, so incredibly beautiful. Side note, you know, fastest I've ever gone in my car. You know, I'm just speeding down I-25 at like 108 miles per hour because it's so clear and nothing's there. Um, you know, Louisiana, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That's where I met my now wife. And you know, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It is the only time I've, honest to God, felt the hand of God touch my life. You know, I remember just months before Baton Rouge thinking, you know, I really gotta get to Baton Rouge, and I didn't know why. And then I got there and I met, you know, my now wife. Who of course I'm crazy about. So a lot of good places, man. I've been blessed. I've been blessed to have lived in a lot of different places, meet a lot of different people, and that's fundamentally at the core of Confessions of Campaign Managers. You know, we're from all over, but we all tell the same story fundamentally.
Yep.
You know. Um, so that was heavy, man.
Yeah.
That makes my final question look very silly.
I was trying to be light, and it turned it into something crazy serious. I apologize.
I
I'll
was
ask you what your favorite Jenny's flavor ice cream is from now on.
I was gonna ask you, you know, would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck?
Is there a right answer to this?
No,
This is.
no.
I am going to go with a horse-sized duck.
Yeah. Okay.
I have to think, and I'm not a small guy. I'm like 6'2", 250, so I'm not
Okay.
a
All right.
small guy. But I have a feeling that the sheer numbers would do me in if I
Yeah.
went the other way. I'd
Yeah.
rather just take my chances on the big duck. If it was just a horse, I'd
Yeah.
skip it because there's no way you're beating a horse. But I might have a chance with a duck. I think he won't move that well. And,
Yeah.
you know, that puts us on even level.
Right.
In that case.
Right.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Now I'm going to be thinking about that the rest of the night. Maybe I should have gone with the 50 horses. So okay, here's my question, and I don't want to make it too serious, but
Yeah.
going back to the book and talking to certainly the pro here, what do you see happening in November?
Oh man.
What are your thoughts, at least at this point? Obviously, we still got a long way to go. A lot can happen.
Yeah, you know, I want to preface all of this by saying my thoughts aren't worth much because I was all in for Kamala Harris. And then you know, I was a Warren person, and then I was like, well, I guess I'm a Biden guy now. That all being said, you know, we're Democrats are just ready to crawl through broken glass, house on fire to get this guy out. And I think more so now in the wake of COVID than ever before. You know, I always said in the ramp up to 2016, one bad day is all we need for all of this to turn to shit.
Yep.
You know, Donald Trump could have 3 years, 11 months, 29 days of good. One bad day is all it takes because
Yep.
he has such extraordinary vulnerabilities in just basic competence. And you know, we're unfortunately seeing that now. The
Yeah.
Dow shed 34% of its value in the last month. Um, you know, the economy largely shut down.
Yep.
We're getting a taste of the true price of incompetence. And so, you know, we saw it even in Wisconsin yesterday. Was the deadline for counting ballots in Wisconsin for this Supreme Court race. And, you know, Republicans tried very hard to limit voting, and it still wasn't enough. The Democrat won. We flipped that seat on the state Supreme Court,
Hmm.
and so I think it's just more evidence. Democrats are really ginned up, you know, and some of it is to tear down a lot of what existed pre-Trump, that I think we kind of glossed over.
Hmm.
And a lot of it is to just get back to normalcy, man. Get back to a time period where like the markets didn't move based on a single tweet. And you know, people could sleep at night, not wondering if the president was gonna tweet something at 3 in the morning that was insane after watching, Fox and Friends. Uh,
I just watched a special on Netflix the other night from a comedian named Mark Marone, and he was talking about this, and he said, "Never in my life have I woke up each day going, I don't know what he's gonna do, man. I don't know what he's gonna do." But you know, I'm almost as excited to see what happens with congressional races as much as I am with the
yeah,
presidential race.
yeah,
So this is just going to be. We learned almost 4 years ago. You never know what might happen.
right.
So and at this point, I for the first time in a while, I'm probably going to be on the edge of my seat election night,
Yeah,
going, what's going to happen, man? I don't know what's going to happen.
yeah, yeah.
So
um, a wild a wild ride. People have told me to write a sequel to Confessions now. Maybe it's not a memoir, but it's still something about 2020.
yeah,
And I think anyone who tells you they know what's going to happen is full of shit.
absolutely. It's just like the stock market. They can tell you all you want. No, at the end of
Exactly.
the day, no one really knows.
Exactly. And on that note, Wall Street actually developed an index, a new risk index to factor in the president. It's actually called the Covfefe Index.
Oh yeah.
That's a real thing. You can Google it.
You never know what tomorrow's going to bring, man. I'm
Right.
telling you.
Right.
Well, I want to tell you, thank you for having a few moments. This has been great. I've enjoyed this. I wouldn't mind doing this over and over again, and I certainly wouldn't mind working with you again. And I'm looking forward
Absolutely.
to seeing your trilogy and some of the other things you have coming out in
Yeah.
the future. I'm excited about it.
Look, best of luck, man. I'll send you my manuscript. I'd love to work together again.
Great, great. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it, and stay safe. And same to everyone out there. Please stay safe, and best of luck to you.
Yes. Hopefully we can all see each other again real soon.
Hope so.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Take care.